Hello there and welcome to a new video from Andy's Shed. In this episode we're going to be looking at trim phones and how to restore them. This is a trim phone that I got through the post the other day and it's got one or two problems. I've not looked inside it yet, so let's do it now. So the first thing to do when we're looking at a trim phone is to take the cover off, and the cover from an original trim phone at least, and it's worth telling you how to spot an original trim phone here. Always look underneath the trim phone. If it's got a line cord that comes into a socket somewhere in the middle here and it's got a little plug on the end of the line cord, then it is not an original trim phone, it's a reproduction one. Other things that are a good way of telling you've got an original is you should have some kind of number across here, which will tell you the model of the phone and will have a date on it. And this one has also been rebuilt and it's got one of the old GPO rebuild stickers on here. It says it was rebuilt in 1979, 79/2 there. So, and it tells us that this is a Teller 722 F for figure, so it's an all figure dial. Right, so we're convinced this is an original trim phone. So take the receiver off the hook, and under here you will find a plastic screw. Now you won't find this on very early ones, they had screws underneath that fitted the case on. But most you'll find a plastic screw here. So what we do is we undo this plastic screw. And you might have to undo it quite a way. Once you feel it go loose, it will actually come out generally. And then to get the cover off, what we actually do is lift the case up at the back and bring it towards us. And it also helps if you put your thumbs on the dial, just to hold the dial down so it doesn't catch on the dial. So we try and lift that up, and it won't come up past the dial in this particular instance. The dial is catching on it. Right, so if the dial catches, if that does happen, the thing to do then is to get a bit of tape or a sucker or something to get this thing off the dial. Now I've just done it by putting my finger under the edge of this one, but what you can do is put a piece of tape across the label cover here, pull up, and it will lift this label cover off then, but I've just managed to do it by putting my finger under the edge of it. So we take that out, and here we take out the what seems to be the original dial label in this one, which is another good way of spotting that it seems to be an original phone. And then you'll find a screw under here. So undo that screw and keep the little screw there. Then the finger wheel just lifts up off a little pip at the side of the screw here. There might be one, there might be two, but it just lifts up off there, and then you can slide it out from under the finger stop here and it comes out like so. So I'll put all that up there together, and now you'll find there's a little metal clip here between these two metal pips. Just take this little clip off. Make sure you don't lose it because it is sprung, this little clip. And there you go. I'll put that there as well. Right, and then this dial plate should then drop out if we turn it upside down. But what we'll do is try and get the case off, and now I've got a finger wheel off, the case comes off, as you see there, so it comes up like that and then towards us this way, because it clips on with a couple of little things there that clip under the front of here. So that comes off like so. We can take that dial off there, And in here you will see the original tube. Now this is what originally made Trimphones glow. The dials used to light up. So this is the original tube. Now the way they used to light up was they were filled with something called tritium, which is a radioactive substance. People get really worried about tritium, but don't worry about it because the half-life of tritium is so short. Now the half-life of something is basically how long it takes the radioactivity in the thing to halve, and then how long it takes it to halve again and halve again and halve again. And because the radioactivity keeps halving and halving and halving and halving and halving, then eventually it gets back down to almost zero. And the half-life of tritium is so short that these dials don't glow anymore, and the radioactivity in them is just not any problem at all. Now this is a particularly interesting dial because we're looking at this one and it's got a lot of metal components in it, which tells me it's probably originally from a very early Trimphone. So let's see if we can just lift this out, and here's the kind of cradle thing it lifts out on, and I'm looking if the dial's got a number on it. Because you'd think these are going to be dial 21s like in 706s and 746s, but they're not supposed to be. They're supposed to be a different dial, which doesn't take as much force to turn it, because a Trimphone is lighter, and if you put a dial 21 in it, when you try and dial a number, the phone just scoots all over the desk. So they're supposed to have a dial that's easier to turn, but they're normally plastic, so finding a metal one's quite interesting. And there are things written on the dial here, but I just can't make them out at the minute. 30 TCC 68-1 TCT 68-1. So it's actually a very early Trimphone dial, that, I believe. So yeah, that's good. So we've got the top off now. We've got the whole thing apart now, and you can now see that we basically have two circuit boards in there. If I adjust the camera a little bit so we can get in a bit closer. Right, you can now see there are basically two circuit boards. There's this board here, which deals with the telephone part of it. That is basically a circuit board which does similar things to the circuit board in a 746 or a 706 phone. And this bit of the circuit board, this one here, which is a separate board, this one deals mainly with the ringer, and you know, that makes that Trimphone sound, that sound. Now the first thing that we need to do is make sure this has been converted properly for plug and socket, because although it's got a plug on the end of it, we need to just make sure it's been converted for plug and socket. So we undo this, yeah, and we look inside here, and it's not bad, but there's one thing I wouldn't say you would normally have. It's got the little thing here to stop acoustic shock, which is basically two diodes back to back. That's normally red, but in this case it's got a blue one in. We're wired up as we should be. The line cord is here. You see it's wrapped around this hollow post here, which is where that plastic screw screws into to hold the case on. So we'll unwrap that from round there a minute and we'll see where everything goes. So starting here it's T1 and here it's T19, I think it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Yes, T19. There's T1 there, T9 there, T10 there, T19 there. And that's the terminal numbers, what we refer to as the terminal numbers. T actually stands for telephone. So if they were in a bell site, they'd be like B1 and B2. But because they're in the telephone, it's T1 and T2, etc., etc. So we'll have a little look at it. I'm going to take that little bit of wire out of there because that shouldn't be there. That's something that somebody bodged in there. That just held this down. So we'll take that out a minute. And we'll have a little look, and we would normally expect to find, for one that's been converted for plug and socket, we would normally expect to find no jumpers basically between 1, 2, 3 or 4, but then a jumper from 4 to 5 which we take out normally and we put a 3.3 kilo ohm resistor in, which is in there. Can you see that under the screwdriver there? There's a little resistor. Okay, so that is 4 to 5. Then 5 to 6 we would expect there to be a jumper, and there is in this one. Can you see it better if I hold it up like that? 5 to 6 is jumper, but 6 to 7 we would not expect a jumper normally because we don't connect anything to 7, so we wouldn't have a jumper there. And then 8 to 9, I'm not sure that jumper is necessary to have, but people tend to leave it in there because very often the red of the line cord ends up connected to T9 rather than to T8 because there's a connection to the orange on the dial on T8 as well, so we often put the red of the line cord onto T9 and leave that jumper in. But I'm not sure that one is a necessity to leave in, provided you connect the red to whatever the orange is connected to, which in this case is T8. But we'll leave it there, means it's there. But I'm going to take this one out because I'm pretty sure this one's not necessary. This one here, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, T6 to T7. I'm pretty sure that one is not necessary for use with plug and socket, and every now and again you get a Trimphone and you need some of these spare jumpers. So whenever you can take out an unnecessary jumper, that one goes in the spare box, ready for when I need one as a spare. So that one's out, and the key at the bottom here is you have to make sure T's 16, 17, 18 and 19 are all jumpered together, which I think you can see there they are. 16, 17, 18 and 19 are all jumpered together. Now this line cord has only got a red, a white and a blue wire in it, and red is going to T8, white is going to T18. They are both sides of your line basically, and your ringer wire, which is the blue one, is going to T6, and it goes from T6, the power goes from T6 through the jumper into 5, through the resistor into 4, and then you'll see there's a thing already off 4 there. I don't know if you can see that goes around this side of here, this brown wire. It's off 4 there, it goes around this side of here, and that actually goes onto the bell circuit down here. And then there's another side from the bell, which basically is the other half of the bell circuit, which comes off the bell circuit there. In this case it's a grey wire, if you can see that there, just in there, and it comes off there and it goes along the bottom of here, and it ends up on here on the last one that's jumpered together on here, which is T19, 18, 17, T16. So it goes from there It's all the way along. You can see it here in my hand. Just pull it out there. There it is, onto 16 there. So that's the other side of the bell circuit. Occasionally you will see the little resistor put in here between T15 and between T16 and 17. You'll put the resistor in there and just put a jumper across here, an ordinary plain jumper between 4 and 5. You can do it that way. I've seen it done on some that I think maybe the GPO did that way. But this is the way we tend to do it normally these days, between 4 and 5. So we'll keep it the way that most people do it these days, just so it doesn't confuse anybody. Okay, so that all looks to be set up okay now for the plug and socket system. So just rest that on there. There's no need at all for that to be massively tied down. If you really want to, you could cable tie it to this metal upstand thing. But as far as I'm concerned now, that is done. The line cord, now this isn't an original line cord. It would wrap round there, and it would normally have a strainer relief on it then that would fit into here, just here, and it would just sort of normally drop in there and clip in as a strainer relief. But if you've not got a strainer relief, you know, do something around this thing here, put a little cable tie on it or something to act as a strainer relief to go down there. So that basically looks like it should work, assuming there's no duff components. The only other thing to tell you about this to watch out for is this switch. Because of the way a Trimphone works, this switch is down when the phone is off the hook and up in that position when the phone is on the hook. And it's all to do with this mechanism under here, this spring-loaded mechanism in here, because when I press it down to be on the hook, it lifts this thing here, see? So if I press it down to be on the hook, that lifts like that. That's lifted now and down here. And so when I press this down, what the receiver would press down to put it on the hook, it actually lifts that up. So that is on hook, that is off hook, on hook, off hook. So if you want to try this out without the cover on, remember that that is the off hook position and that is the on hook position. So if you want to try and make the phone ring, connect it up and make it ring, you have to press that down, otherwise you just get the engaged tone. Okay, right, so moving on, we'll have a little look at this ringer board. Okay, I've zoomed the camera in a bit closer now so we can have a look at this ringer board and see what's happening here. Right in the middle, the first thing that you notice is what appears to be a speaker that would be like the speaker you would find in the handset of a Trimphone. That is indeed a speaker. That is a speaker that the warble comes out of. So that's your speaker that makes the noise. But what people often don't notice about a Trimphone is this dial on the side here, which can be turned and set from soft, that's a medium position, and loud. Soft, medium and loud. And it's a switch that wipes through these contacts on the top of here, and these contacts do tend to get discoloured and dirty, and so it doesn't work the way it should necessarily. And it goes from soft through medium to loud. So what you have to do is get a little screwdriver or something and carefully just clean these contacts on here. Just give them a little scrape if they're looking a bit black, and make sure that they touch where this thing wipes around. This part should wipe round underneath these 3-4 contacts. You find it doesn't get to that contact. I'll explain about that one in a minute, but it should wipe round underneath these other 3, and this one does. And the bit that sticks out of this wiper, as we'll call it, touches these 2 here, which are shorter than this one. This longer one here actually touches the inner ring, so that one should be in contact all the time on that inner ring. And then depending on the position of the switch depends on whether it's in contact with this one or this one. Okay, so we'll just clean that up a little bit as necessary. This one's not too bad, I have seen them worse than this, but just make sure these little wipers are pressed down so they will actually engage with it when you want them to. Now, you may have noticed they're loud, medium, soft, and it doesn't go any further, but there's a little screw here. If we take this little screw out, and it will probably be jammed up because it hasn't been moved for years. And if we slacken off this screw, you don't have to take it fully out, you can just slacken it off, then you can turn it further and you'll find it's got an off position as well that is normally not obtainable. Now, don't put the screw back in when you're in the off position, because if you do, nothing will happen, because it's actually going to a hole in this disc down here. It's actually trying to go through a hole in this bottom disc that it's not getting to. So you've just undone that screw enough, that screw there, to get to the off position. So now, if you have this phone in your bedroom, let's say, and you don't want to get calls at night, just by loosening that screw you can activate the off position. And if you want to make it so you can't turn it off again, just go back to soft or loud, and while you're in that position, screw the screw right down, and again then you can't turn it to off. You can still turn it up to loud, but you can't turn it down beyond soft. Loosen the screw a bit and you can turn it off again. So I normally loosen them so that you've got the off option available to you. Now this circuit board, don't look too bad, don't look anything wrong with it. It is a bit dirty though. You'll see there's dirt on it down here. What I tend to do is I get a fairly stiff paintbrush like this, and just fairly carefully just give it a rub to get any loose dust off it. Obviously don't whack away at it and break anything, but just a little bit carefully give it a bit of a dust. Then I just give it a blow just to get rid of any of the remaining stuff, and that should now all work. But there is a problem with this Trimphone, and that problem is with the dial. And to demonstrate that, I need to put the dial back together temporarily to see what's going on. So here we are. Here's the Trimphone with the top off still. and we'll put the dial back into place. Now you'll notice it's in this plastic cradle thing. The back 2 feet of this cradle have actually got like feet on them, like a leg and a foot. Those feet, the toes of those feet, go down the side of the ringer circuit board and then slide underneath the edge of the sort of telephone circuit board, for want of a better description of it. And then the front legs just drop just inside the case there, like that. So it sits there. Nothing holds it in other than when you put the case back on the top. It just sits there like that. So I'm going to leave that there just for a minute. Now I'm not going to bother putting the dial face back on or the spring clip at the minute. All I'm going to do is put the finger wheel on and the little screw that holds it on, just so we can see what's happening with the dial. So I'll put that on. You don't have to do it up tight because we're going to be taking it off again, because your dial should dial it round and it should return on its own on a spring. So let's see what happens. There we go, dial it round and it doesn't come back, you see. It'll come back with a little bit of help from its friends, but it doesn't come back on its own. So there's something stuck or jammed up there, and I'm guessing it's just jammed up. Sometimes there is a spring in the back of these that can break. If it doesn't want to come back at all, that'll be because of a broken spring in the dial. But this one, when I get it in certain places, it does come back a bit. So I know that spring's not broken, or I'm fairly sure it's not broken anywhere, because it has still got a bit of springiness in it. So I think it just needs a little bit of cleaning up and oiling. So we'll take the screw out again, take the finger wheel off again, and we'll have a little look at the clutch mechanism. Now if I can zoom you in further on this, hopefully I can show you what the clutch mechanism is. Now the clutch mechanism is this little thing here, which has actually got sort of 2 cogs on it. It's got a big one that engages on this here. This thing here is a governor with 2 weights on this end of it, and as the dial goes round, the governor goes round and these weights fly outwards, and it's what governs it. It's similar to a governor on a steam engine, if you've seen how one of those works, and it just stops the dial from flying back really fast. But this thing here is a clutch, and when you dial round, so your dial is directly connected to this big brass gear here. When you dial that round, that should turn this small cog here, small pinion here, but it shouldn't turn the other one on the clutch. It's not the end of the world if it does, if it turns the governor, but it shouldn't, because it should be able to turn that way just on its own, and mine can't. When it comes back the other way, they should both go. But the problem one of the problems that I've got is this thing is seized up. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out this clutch mechanism, and one of the things you've got to do to take that out is to remove this standoff here, which is hexagonal, but it's very difficult to get a hex span on it. So what I normally do is get a small set of needle nose pliers on it, grab it near the bottom, and it shouldn't be too tight, and you can then unscrew that, or set that to one side, and you're aiming to get this bit of metal off here. It's sometimes plastic on later dials. On this one it happens to be brass, but on later dials it's plastic. So you'll see there's another screw up here holding it on. So we'll take that screw out as well. Okay, and then this should lift off. There we go. Remember that little screw in there? I tend to leave that screw in there because it's a devil to get in and out on its own. And then once we've got that out, the little clutch mechanism thing here, you should, with a bit of jiggery pokery, be able to get that out. Now on a normal 706 or 746 you can do that, but this seems to be holding it in. Yeah, this thing that holds the tritium tube in place. So I'm just wondering how we get that off. So let's have a little look. And it would seem that if we take these two screws out here that hold the finger stop, that might go some way to helping us release it. So we'll just loosen those. That then lets us take that finger stop off. And now is this loose? No. Is the simple answer. So let's have a look and see if there's a way, and I think it's actually all built in together, so I don't think we can actually get that off. So let's see if we, with a bit of fiddling around, I can get this out. You normally can, one way or another. But I've never taken one out of a Trimphone before. I've never needed to because they're normally plastic, and the plastic ones don't seem to jam up. But this one has done, and I'm trying to do it without having to take all this apart, because if you have to take all this apart you then get involved with the spring mechanism, which I'm trying not to have to do. So let's just say, and there's no way that's going to come out of there. Had this been a normal 746 dial or 706, then it would have come out, but there doesn't seem to be any way that it's going to come out of this particular dial, and it doesn't seem as if there's a way of splitting that tritium ring housing from the rest of the dial. So let's see what happens then if we do remove these two little screws here. And there you go, boom, the spring has just gone flop, 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 flop. Did you hear it go? It's just released itself, which means now we're going to have to mess about with all the spring and that on the back of here. So I think what I'm going to do is take the dial out of the mounting now, because we've actually got to go quite a long way into this. So I'm going to take the dial connections off here. So just note these connections in this order: orange, pink, brown, grey and blue, and these are just on little tiny connectors that just pull off like that. There's orange, pink, brown, grey and blue. The pink one being higher than the others. Now, orange, pink, brown, grey, blue. Sorry you couldn't see that before, could you? I was zoomed too far in. Okay, so now we've released the dial and we can have a look at the dial here. Right, I'll just move some of the stuff to one side that we don't need, and we'll be back to take a look at this jammed up dial in a moment. Right, a little bit of time has passed now, and I was looking at how to get this little thing out, this little clutch mechanism thing that I'd removed the bracket for, and I said if it was only 706 or 746 you'd just be able to lift it out by a bit of waggling about here, but because this is a Trimphone dial and it's got the housing for the tritium tube around it that illuminates the dial, you can't actually get it out because that kind of overlaps the centre a bit. And I tried taking a couple of screws out the middle of here to lift this off, I thought, but that just released the spring in the dial. So I've ended up turning that and putting one of those screws back in so it's spring loaded again. So don't take that screw out there because all that did was release the spring. It didn't help me. But I've looked on the back of the dial now and I've found two big screws here and here, and these look like they will release it from this sort of silver but plasticky cover plate. So if we take these two big screws out, there's one there you can see and one there. Now on later plastic dials this might be a little bit different, but on this is how you do it. So that big screw there, got that one out, and then that one there, yeah, the two big screws on the back of here that are sort of flat on the back of the dial, there aren't any more, so you can't get it wrong. Take that out, and hey presto then, all the dial mechanism lifts off. The thing has dropped out in my hand there, but there's your plastic surround with the tritium tube in it. There's the back of the dial, and here's the thing that's giving us the problem that seems to be totally jammed up. Now what it should do, if you very carefully hold that with a pair of pliers and turn that bit that way, it should turn, but not the other way, because it should have like a clutch dog in it. So if you hold the little pinion in a pair of pliers from the side that you're looking at it, you should be able to turn the big one clockwise but not anti-clockwise, and I can't turn it at all at the minute. So what I'm going to do is put on a bit of light oil. Now you can use 3-in-1 oil, or this is Wilko's own brand equivalent here in the UK. I'm going to put a bit of oil on that and let that sink in, put plenty on, let that sink in, and hopefully that'll get into it and might start to ease it off a bit. So I'm going to get a cloth so I can hold that easier, because it's really sharp to hold. And is it going to start to turn? Answer, no, it's not. It's seized absolutely solid. Okay, here's the good news. I've got another one of these little clutch mechanisms here. If you can just get focus on that, and if you can see this one, if I hold that one, you'll see I can hold that little pinion and that one will turn. The big one will turn clockwise behind it, but it doesn't turn the other way, it just turns one way. So this one is working. It's a little bit stiff though, so again I'm going to put a little bit of oil on it, just dribble a little bit on. And then just work it a bit. And dribble a little bit of oil on there. And then just work it a little bit. Just like that. And the way it does turn, it doesn't turn the other way. And it should start to turn really easy. You might have to work it quite a lot, but eventually it should turn easily. So we keep working it, let the oil get into it. It should turn really easily if it in one direction, but not at all in the other direction. If it doesn't, then you need to work it some more until it does. I'm actually doing this on one of the hottest days of the year here, and it really is mega hot. You should be able to run it over your back of your hand and it turn, and that is doing just, but I feel it could be looser. Let's see if I put a bit of cloth down, if I can run it on a bit of cloth. You see what I'm doing there? Just running it on there. Put the cloth down so it's got something to bite on. Okay, so that now turns fairly easily in that direction, doesn't turn at all in that direction. So we'll put all this back together. So the first thing that I've got to do then, and I can do this in a slightly different order now, is I can now put this back, the bottom of this engaged in a little hole in there, so I can put that back in there, and the little one has got to engage with this big brass gear here, and the white cog has got to engage with the governor here, and you can see that does. So now I can put the little thing back on here. And there's a hole in the end there that just fits over the top of that clutch mechanism, and then at the other end there's a screw that, you remember, I kept in the bracket. I said I'll just leave that sitting in there so you don't lose it. That's got a little hole in that back plate to fit into. So I can carefully screw that little screw part way in, then engage the other end over that cog where it should be, like that. And then remember I had this standoff thing that also has to screw in through that remaining spare hole there. So that then has to go in there. So now I'll tighten that screw up. Doesn't have to be mega tight, just sort of nice and gently. And then just tighten that up a bit. And there we go. And now this should turn and go back, and it does. You see? So, and this is because we're lubricating it all up. We're gradually lubricating bits up. Now I'm going to over oil this a little bit because it's not had any oil for a long time. So I'm probably going to over oil this. But I just want to get it going because it has been jammed up. So eventually, before we put this phone back into use, I'll probably come back in here and take some of this oil off, you know, with a clean cloth, just dab it off or something and get some of it off. But I just want to make sure it's well oiled for now, just to get it going. So, we've oiled all that, we've oiled the bearings and the ends of the governor there. So we've put all that back together. So now we've got to put this tritium plate back on. It goes there. Look for where the holes line up to put those two sort of dome headed screws back in. One goes in there, I think. Like so. And one goes in there. Is it in there? No, it's in there, it's in that one. Almost 180 degrees across from the other one. There. And I'll just start it with my fingers. And then we'll get the screwdriver on it. I've got a little bit of white on the end of that screwdriver, it must be slightly magnetic. And that goes in there like that. Right, so this is all oiled up now. So if I now just temporarily put this finger plate back on and put the screw in the middle, so the finger plate is back on and the screw's in the middle. If I now turn that, you see it does now go back. It's still a bit slow, but we might need to adjust the governor. And also we need to get the oil tank to work into the system. So we'll take that off again. Take the finger plate off again, or finger wheel rather. And here it is. You see it's all working now nicely. Right. Now remember I took the finger stop off with two screws in it. Here it is. We'll put it back on. Put the two screws into place. Really long screws they are, because they go a long way in before they actually bite onto anything. Put that back in. Sometimes you find Trimphone dials that have lost the tritium tube, but it's always nice to have one with the tube in there. Even though the tube doesn't illuminate anymore, I think it's nice historically to keep it in there. Like I say, don't worry about the radioactivity of it. It's really nothing to worry about. And then that goes in there. Those standoffs, that one we took out, that one and the other one, they just pop through the holes in this, so you can't get it in the wrong place. And then remember that clip that we had, that metal clip? Right, you can't get this the wrong way around. If you get it the wrong way, oh, you can get it the wrong way around on this, because it's normally this clip is asymmetrical. It's got a bit more wire at one end, at that end, than it has at this end. So if you did it the wrong way around, there'd be a bit of wire that would stick over the top of this slightly sticky up bit here. So if it is asymmetrical, make sure the long end of the wire is at this side. Okay, so you put that back on. That's now all together, and if we want to test the dial now, we can actually put the finger wheel back on, like so. Just screw that back into place. And we can now well, here's the good news. I've now been working the dial a little bit, and you can see it's now running a lot faster. Now remember I said the governor inside here, if you can't make the dial run fast enough, just bend the legs of the governor a little bit so the little balls on the end of the governor start closer to the governor shaft so they don't fly out as far, and that will have the effect of speeding the dial up also. But this one now is running at about the right speed, and the way you tell it's running at the right speed is you put your finger in the 0 and you go around to the finger stop, and as you let it go you say to yourself 1001, and you should finish speaking just as the 0 hole gets back round to where the 0 is on the dial. So let's try it. 1001. 1001. So that's about right. They're better to be a little bit on the fast side than on the slow side to deal with modern exchangers, because what I've found is modern exchangers will tolerate them being a little bit fast, they won't necessarily tolerate them being a little bit slow. But that one's about right. 1001. So that's the dial sorted. So we can now see about putting it back on the phone. So I've just got to reconnect the dial up to all those wires that are on there, all these wires here, which I disconnected it from before. So I've basically got the dial going on the Trimphone and everything, so all that remains to do now is to put it back together. So we do that like this. I've already put the dial back into the plastic case on the back. Remember to put the wires through that plastic before you recouple them onto the dial, like there. Put those feet with the toes under the upper circuit board, the other feet just in the front there, and then you can put the face of the dial, otherwise known as the finger plate, back on. Then that little clip, remember that has to go back and clips on those two pegs that stick out the front of the dial there. Then it's always best then, I think, to put the case on. Remember there's two little lugs on the front of the case here that engage under here, so they have to engage under there, and the case pushes down. You have to get it over the dial. Sometimes you have to pull the dial this way a bit into place to make it engage where it should. make sure the hook switch is free. Then you put that big screw in, for want of a better word, a big plastic screw thing. That goes back in the top. Like so. Then your finger wheel. That bit goes back on, it fits on a little lug, or maybe two little lugs on the middle there. Then that screw goes in the centre just to hold it in place. And just to finish it off, your dial label. You can make a new one if you want, but I'll put the original one back in here for now. And then the dial cover, the label cover rather, just presses on top of that. And that is how you restore a Trimphone. And you can see now it dials beautifully. So that's how you do it. Remember, if you've enjoyed this video, give us a like and give us a subscribe if you want to see more of similar content. And also, as well as subscribing, hit that little bell icon as well, because then you'll get notified next time we put up another video. You can also find us on Patreon at patreon.com/AndyShed, and you can find our very own website where you can find more details about what we do, links to our Patreon page and that, etc. at andyshed.coldpress.net. That's andyshed.coldpress.net. So, until next time, thanks for watching and happy calling.